The Roman Empire is one of the most famous and influential states in all of world history, and its spectacular rise and disastrous fall continues to captivate us after more than 2,000 years. Rome's contributions to art, architecture, law, language, religion, and culture still surround us. At its height, the Roman Empire covered 2.3 million square miles over 3 continents, stretching north to Britannia and south deep into Egypt. It's hard to imagine that it all started with a single city. I'm archaeologist Darius Arya, and in this series, we'll discover the contributions of Rome, its incredible monuments, beautiful landscapes, strategic organization, and its provinces and their resources. We'll explore the founding of the city and its evolution from one capital to many, to truly appreciate Rome's impact on the rest of the empire. In this episode, we'll explore what we call the Middle East, Jordan along the Roman Empire's dramatic eastern frontier, and Petra, Rome, and the Rose City, the kingdom of the Nabateans. From up here on the citadel, Jebel al-Kala, almost 2,800 feet above sea level, you can get an amazing perspective of Amman, the capital of Jordan. By the 3rd century BCE, the city thrived as a new urban center, the Ptolemaic Philadelphia, that finally fell under the sway of the Nabateans, an ancient and mysterious nomadic Arab people who built the city of Petra and relied heavily on caravan routes, the spice trade, and agriculture for thousands of years. But it was in the Roman phase that the city enjoyed a truly privileged position in this region of the empire, displaying wealth and prestige throughout the city. From the citadel, an easily defensible area with a dominating view, you can enjoy a palimpsest of a Byzantine church, an 8th century Umayyad palace, and 12th century Ayyubid watchtower. Layers of history. Amman was founded on 7 hills or jebels, but the city is so much larger today. Look down below us and all around us, this massive urban sprawl. What a spectacular view from the citadel, the city's Acropolis. It's already used as a fortified point in the Bronze Age, but what dominates your experience today is the remains of this Roman-era temple. Resting on a podium half the size of a football field, the columns were re-erected at a height of 45 feet, composed of drums weighing 11 tons apiece. And it would have been visible to the people down below in the Roman Forum. The location of the Acropolis in Amman and the position of the temple overlooking the city is a reminder of the construction and layout of Rome, with amazing views from the Acropolis on the Capitoline Hill. It represents the time of the apogee of Rome over Jordan in the 2nd century CE. In fact, it's this dedicatory inscription, written in Greek by the dedicator Gabinius Marcianus, who was the provincial governor of Arabia Petrea when Roman Philadelphia was at its peak. Now, his career exemplifies the expanse of the Roman Empire. He's born in Sirte, modern Algeria, goes to Rome as a first-generation senator, a novus homo, or new man, and has his career in various offices during the cursus honorum. He is a distinguished general under Marcus Aurelius, fighting in the Parthian Wars, and ends up his career as provincial governor here, and ultimately, afterward, in the province of Asia, which is the Roman term for Western Turkey. His offering of this temple mirrors the pinnacle of Roman influence in Roman Jordan, the importance of Roman citizenship here, the economic and political weight of Rome was dominant throughout this region. But nothing lasts forever, and this temple ultimately falls into ruin to be reutilized in later constructions in subsequent periods. Indeed, the citadel continued to have an important role afterward, first as a Christian center with a Byzantine church, and then the sprawling, extensive Umayyad palace of the 8th century. Now, the Umayyad dynasty ruled from 661 to 750, and it extended its reach from Persia, through the Middle East, across North Africa, and into Spain, one of the greatest and largest empires in history. Amidst the busy streets, signs of modernity and socializing in the bustling capital city, where the average age of its citizens is under 24 years old, I'm making my way not just to the historic center of the city, with the Grand Husseini Mosque of 1932, but also the ancient center of ancient Philadelphia, where a portion of the Roman-era monuments are still nestled within the lively urban fabric. I'm in the heart of ancient Philadelphia of the 2nd century CE. But there already was an impressive Hellenistic center, but under the Romans, the prosperity really took off. It all started with Pompey the Great, who conquered Syria and the Levant in 63 BC. And as a result, this city, always along the caravan route passing from north to south down to the Arabian Peninsula, truly benefited. And you have this impressive, important stop on that caravan route in this magnificent city. The remains today are still impressive, like this Greek theater built on a hillside. And that's in contrast to Roman-style theaters that were typically freestanding. Now, the Scene Franz, the stage set right here, is beautifully preserved. And this is built in the reign of Antonius Pius, a period of relative tranquility and peace in the empire. It held 6,000 spectators, and it's still in use today. I'm in the Odeon, which is a music hall just off the Forum. Looks like a theater, but it's smaller. That's because this was designed for musical performances, singing, debates, lectures. Originally, there was a wooden roof on top, and it was all about acoustics and intimacy. It held about 500 people. It's largely intact still today. Ancient Philadelphia boasted the assets of a rich, urbanized community with impressive public venues. And just around the corner, there's the historic mosque of modern Amman. So you have this center used in antiquity and continued to be reused still today. We're headed north just 30 miles to explore one of the greatest preserved urban centers from Roman times. Jerash, known as the Pompeii of the Middle East. Like Amman, it was also part of the Decapolis that flourished under Rome. These 10 cities were similar in language, religion, and their ties to Hellenistic culture. Although the lists of the 10 cities vary, they include cities in today's Israel, Syria, and Jordan. In particular, Jerash, Sceliopolis, Hippos, Gadara, Pella, Philadelphia, Capitolius, Qanawat, Rafana, and Damascus. Most of the cities were Greek foundations created in the 3rd to 2nd centuries BCE and remained contested by various kingdoms like the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, Nabateans, and Judeans, then sorted and organized as a special autonomous grouping under Pompey the Great in 63 BCE. the cities culturally became a mix of Hellenistic Greek, Jewish, Nabatean, Aramaean, and Roman, achieving great wealth from their natural resources, namely fertile land, varieties of produce, availability of water, and location, along the principal caravan land routes carrying precious commodities from the Arabian Peninsula and the Far East. This magnificent arch, heavily restored, welcomes you to the outer limits of Jerash. It was constructed to honor the Emperor Hadrian in 129-130 when he was actually here. Hadrian, the restless emperor, who spent so much of his reign in the provinces, not in Rome. He was listening, defending, improving the empire. He actually wintered here between 129 and 130. And this arch is evocative of the grandeur of the triumphal arches in Rome, the Arch of Titus and the Arch of Septimius Severus. Inhabited as early as the Neolithic era, Jerash was settled by Alexander the Great's veterans, then refounded in the 2nd century BCE as Antioch on the Kearsarus, the Golden River. Laid out on a series of terraces, the western side developed according to the lay of the land, with public structures from north to south parallel with the river that ran through the middle of the town, joined by 2 bridges, possibly 4. The flatter eastern side developed into a quarter for large baths and possibly more residential living. A large circuit of walls over 2.5 miles long, built between the 1st and 3rd centuries CE, eventually surrounded the city's 200 acres, but its disparate parts became unified by colonnades and piazzas, a series of arches and monumental fountains that leave the visitor spellbound today. A huge area outside the city walls, lined with tombs, was cleared out for the construction of this circus for chariot racing. And you have here some of the best preserved carceres, or starting blocks, in the ancient world. This held up to 15,000 spectators, and some of the seating is still preserved. Actually considered to be the smallest circus in the ancient world, just about 265 meters long, consider that the Circus Maximus in Rome is over 600 meters long. Nevertheless, having a hippodrome or a circus is a sign of wealth and prominence of the city, and a rarity in the Greek East. Past tombs, shops, and even a Byzantine-era church, we finally come to the massive wall circuit at the monumental southern gate. Passing through it, we arrive in one of the most marvelously conceived urban spaces in the Roman world. I'm in the Oval Forum of Jerash. This is an amazing architectural space, and you're surrounded still today by the original columns. This is a space created to connect you to all parts of the city. It accommodates you as you come through the city gates. It can direct you at an oblique angle up to the grand sanctuary of Zeus and the major theater, and it introduces you to the beginning of the Cardo, this main elegant avenue that conducts you to the rest of the city. Got the pavement here that's original. You've got a masterful creation, a wonderful architectural space, and it really does give you a grand sense of how amazing this city once was. The Roman-era sanctuary of Zeus, this grand temple, overlooks the Oval Forum. It greets you as you enter the city. It's a kind of an Acropolis-like setting right next to the magnificent theater. It is one of the 2 key sanctuaries in the city of Jerash. When you walk through ancient imperial Rome, you had a stunning display of colonnades everywhere, lining porticos, carrying you through the Campus Martius, the Roman Forum, the Imperial Forum, all the way to the Colosseum. But we've lost that. We have it here in Jerash. countless columns still standing on the main street. The sanctuary of the city patron Artemis was constructed later in the Antonine period. It was a masterpiece of planning and one of the largest sanctuaries in the Roman world. It too was terraced, responding to the natural topography of the city, with a huge staircase and its colonnaded promenade with trapezoidal courtyard extended across the river to the eastern side of the city. The central piazza was a whopping 161 by 121 meters, and the experience today is stunning as all of the fundamental architectural pieces remain in place. In the Christian era, the city went through a radical transformation, and you have that moment of recycling and repurposing so much architecture, big blocks, into new constructions. There are documented 20 churches and 3 Byzantine bath complexes. And some of them were quite large, like this cathedral. It's gigantic in the shadow of the Temple of Artemis, and that's not by chance. We're here in a space in the shadow of the Temple of Artemis, and you have a big saw that's powered by this water wheel. What a great use of the water to power. You have this technology in place at a time when you need to recycle the material. It's very effective, it's very efficient, it's very industrialized. And right here we can see the cuts made by the saw. This particular block of marble is abandoned, where we can see the precision with the blades and how many blades are actually used. So it's a great example of what existed also in antiquity, so rarely preserved. Here we have it in the Byzantine era when life was still thriving in Jerash. Jerash is destabilized and even overrun by the Persian Sassanids in the early 7th century. By the mid-7th century, it's now Muslim, and you have your first mosque. Then you have the destructive forces of a massive earthquake in the middle of the 8th century, and the city never recovers. It's pretty much shrinking down to a small village. By about the 12th century, there's even a Crusader fort, but then it's entirely abandoned, and it becomes a quarry site. Fast forward to the excavations and the rediscovery of Jerash in the early 20th century. But they've just begun to scratch the surface, because the eastern half of this ancient city is still underneath modern Jerash today. We're driving down the King's Highway, known in the Roman period as the Via Regia. It was the principal land route that the Nabatean-led caravans took from the Red Sea in the south, heading north to Syria, laden with goods, frankincense, myrrh, bitumen, ivory, destined for the grand Roman market. The Emperor Trajan organized the area into a new Roman province, Arabia Petraea, and built a new main road, the Via Traiana Nova. Nabateans' primacy shrank under the wave of new roads, new routes, and ultimately a new line of defense, the fortified Limes Arabicus, which lasted for centuries. Afterward, in the Byzantine period, the King's Road became an important Christian pilgrimage route for nearby Mount Nebo, where Moses, a revered prophet and teacher in Judaic tradition, died and is buried. The Roman-built fortress, the Qasr Bashir, was part of the Limes Arabicus, defended against Arab raids, and protected the territory from brigands. It was always a porous border with control over strategic locations. We're 50 miles south of Amman, in arid steppeland, at an elevation of 800 meters. The fort is strategically located with a view to the north over a river valley. 1.5 miles away and half a mile away is a ridge overlooking the desert to the east. It's perfect for cavalry patrols. This small fort was intended for half of the normal Limitani troops, those men stationed along the border, so just 60 men total and their mounts. This fort is famous for its level of preservation. An inscription over the gateway dates it to the Diocletianic era, around 293 to 306 CE. The structure is rather small, roughly square, 56 by 57 meters. It displays the typical architecture of this time for a castellum, projecting towers at the corners and flanking the gate, an inner courtyard surrounded on all 4 sides by barracks and stables. After the Battle of Yarmouk, not far away, that ended the Roman rule of the Middle East in 636, many others created new circuits of castles along this line. Defensive and for communication, but of a different, more imposing nature. The Crusader king Baldwin I built this fortification after the First Crusade in 1115. It's known as Croix de Montreal and Mons Regalis because the king himself was associated with its construction. Its purpose was twofold. One was to protect the eastern frontier of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and the other was to control the critical corridor from Egypt to Syria. The castle was located in a quintessential strategic location, as fertile plains surrounded an isolated hilltop. Essentially, it was impregnable, and not far off there was Petra, that so long ago controlled the same land corridor for trade and commerce. In 1187, the Ayyubid Sultan Saladin attacked Jerusalem, and it fell immediately. Then he came here because this was such a strategic location. He brought his siege engines. He thought it would be over very quickly. But instead, this castle resisted. How was it possible? For 2 years. They had a secret. They had previously dug a tunnel, 375 steps, piercing through the entire height of this hill to hit water, a natural spring, so they're able to resist. But ultimately, it fell in 1189, ending the presence of the Crusaders in Transjordan. Control and protection defined these castles, but that's not the entire story in this region. Let's continue south to explore a different facet of ancient Jordan. In the desert, where the nomadic city life is preserved still today. There's nothing in the world like Wadi Rum. And one of the reasons is because you have this unique sand full of iron oxide that makes it this red color. And for this reason, Wadi Rum stands in for Offworld, for Mars, for Dunes Arrakis, and the desert planets of Star Wars. And it really does deserve to have that kind of feel of being in another world, because there's nothing with this beautiful landscape, there's nothing like this on the planet. Wadi Rum is known by the locals as Wadi al-Qamar, that's Valley of the Moon. This is a World Heritage Site that consists of 285 square miles. Granite formations, weathered sandstone, canyons, valleys, natural arches, red sand deserts. It's forever associated with T.E. Lawrence, who was here and wrote about his impressions during the Arab Revolt from 1917 to to 1918. The massive formation behind me is known to the locals as Hashim al-Mazmar, but to tourists and people around the world, it's known as the 7 Pillars of Wisdom. "25,000 petroglyphs are etched in the walls of the canyons of Wadi Rum, 20,000 inscriptions in Nabatean, Bermudic, and Arabic, documenting the lives of people in pastoral societies and traders in caravans. There's so much history here in Wadi Rum. There's 154 archaeological sites, 1 notable Nabatean temple. We have then documented 12,000 years of occupation of this space. And so many of the inscriptions are Nabatean in their period of flourishing from the 2nd century BC through the 1st century CE. We've seen that the rich, varied history of Jordan is literally written on the walls, recording the caravan routes matched by this otherworldly landscape. Before and after the Romans, people have tried to dominate the harsh land of Jordan with caravan highways, mighty urban centers, desert fortifications, and more. Today, exploring the natural landscape of Wadi Rum, once part of the expansive Roman Empire, we can contemplate just how much this corner of that world was always an entity unto itself, still waiting to be discovered to connect to its ancient past. From Jordan, we travel about 150 miles southwest to Petra, Rome and the Rose City, the kingdom of the Nabateans. Who are the Nabateans? Well, their tombs tell us so much about them. Like this one, the Tomb of the Obelisk, as it's known for obvious reasons, underlining that the Nabateans had relationships with other civilizations, like Egypt. The Nabateans' written language was based upon Aramaic and had a particular cursive script that developed into Arabic. And the spoken Nabatean was based upon a form of Arabic as well, and reminds us of the origins of the Nabateans from the deserts of Arabia. The inscription is bilingual. It's also in Greek, and it reads, "This is the tomb of Agman, the son of Achaeus. It's for himself and his children. It dates between the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE. It's worth considering that the Nabatean world was multicultural. You had art, architecture, religion mediated through experiences with other people and empires, even the Roman Empire. They have left behind a treasure of architecture that we can explore, including a wonderful array of tomb types: pylon, heger with step crenellations, arch, and classical, with identifiable local elements, but also Greek, Egyptian, and even Mesopotamian features. Nomadic tribe from Arabia, the Nabateans eventually controlled this part of the Great Rift Valley, as far north as Syria, as far south as northern Arabia, interacting with various powers from Mesopotamia to Jerusalem. Initially noted as brigands and robbers, they harassed the steady stream of caravans traveling across timeless routes from Egypt to Syria and beyond. The goods they first stole from the caravans and then trafficked included frankincense and myrrh, used for religious rites, bitumen from Egypt, and silk from China, brought along the Silk Road. They had innate knowledge of the desert, hidden paths, uses of dromedaries, and stashes of water, hidden cisterns. There are many entrances into Petra from the north and from the south, but the famous one is the Sikh, located to the east. It's literally invisible from the outside. The Arabs call it the Sikh. It means the shaft, and it winds its way 3/4 of a mile into Petra. Now, it's created by a shifting of tectonic plates, splitting apart the mountain, worn smooth by floodwaters from Wadi Musa. All along the route, it's lined with niches filled with anicanic figures, or betils. That means that this was as much a religious processional route as it was one of commerce. Walking along the Sikh, I'm reminded of my stroll along the Via Appia, one of Rome's longest roads and trade routes. It's also lined with monuments and tombs, a tribute to the many great citizens of its time. The walk through the Sikh today is as it was thousands of years ago. Some points, the Sikh is very narrow, even a few feet. Other times, it's quite wide. But always looming overhead are these massive cliffs. But what happened here in antiquity? This relief reminds us of what happened. We have a camel driver here. We have reliefs of several Arabian camels, the dromedaries, laden with goods. There would have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of camels filled to the brim with myrrh and frankincense and other goods headed into Petra. Water was a key to the longevity of the Nabatean city. They controlled this precious resource by harnessing the water from the winter floods by dams and cutting cisterns into the walls. They applied this knowledge throughout their territory so that these hidden cisterns were only known to them. Wow, this cistern is huge. It's all cut out by hand. It contained an enormous amount of water. This is how the Nabateans conquered the desert. I'm just exiting the Sikh, and this is why we come to Petra, for this experience, for this wonder. This narrow passageway subtly reveals to you the magnificent facade of the treasury, carved from the living rock. In a natural courtyard, the facade is almost entirely intact, standing 128 feet high on a massive wall of sandstone. It's known as the Al-Khazne Faroum, the pharaoh's treasure, named by local Bedouin tribes according to the legend that it held a hidden treasure from a long-lost pharaoh. Shooting it in the right spot would supposedly reveal the gold, hence the bullet holes on the monument. But it wasn't a treasure at all. It was either a temple, or it was a royal tomb, or it was maybe a memorial mausoleum. We really don't know. But inside, there are carved 3 large rooms to accommodate either public or private veneration. Now, beneath here, there were found tombs dating to 50 BCE. They're the oldest documented tombs in Petra. The latest tomb, the last tomb of Petra, dates to 130 CE. They built so much in so little time. And it demonstrates the great wealth of Petra, and it underlines the artistic and architectural bravura of its craftsmen. Much of the decoration has funerary associations. The lower half resembles a regular temple facade, guarded by 2 Dioscuri figures, straight out of Hellenistic Greek artwork and mythology. Above, the pediment is split in half with the tholos, a round temple-like structure. Amazons with raised weapons and winged Nike figures stand atop, and the central tholos figure is a woman holding a cornucopia, possibly an Isis or Tike figure, ultimately associated with the Nabatean goddess Aludza. The pediment is surmounted by eagles. Whatever his relationship with the treasury, a king surely commissioned it, but his identification is still a mystery in the absence of any form of inscriptional evidence, though frequently scholars associate this building with Aratus IV, the great builder of Petra monuments. Beyond the natural courtyard of the treasury, the city begins to unfold as the area widens out, revealing a sprawling space of 250 acres hemmed in by a protective series of rocky mountaintops. At its peak, the city held as many as 20,000 inhabitants, and we should now consider that the greater area around Petra, now UNESCO World Heritage Site, contains satellite towns and outposts spread across 102 square miles. Which king built what in Petra remains a big question. Literary sources and a few precious inscriptions name the protagonists, such as Aretas IV, who was the greatest builder in Petra. He was active during the reigns of Augustus and Tiberius. Petra's kings ruled over 275 years of success, expansion, and finally absorption into the Roman Empire in the early 2nd century CE. They left behind an impressive artistic and architectural display similar to the Greco-Roman repertoire, but with a distinct Nabatean flair. Walking along the street of facades, it's as if every single inch of the cliffs had been carved with tombs. Over 600 have been documented of varying dimensions, and they serve to frame the entire central valley of Petra, where you have the urban center. All of the structures of the urban center of Petra are aligned along this road. There are massive sanctuaries, markets, and shops. There's even an irrigated garden space using the Nabatean water system. Underneath, though, beforehand, you had a domestic quarter, houses. They're all obliterated to make this one organizing street under the reign of Aretas IV. And when we first go through this arch, a triumphal arch built by the Romans, you're entering into a religious temenos space, a sacred precinct with shrines and a gigantic temple. This is the most impressive temple preserved in Petra. Now known locally as Qasr bint Faraun, that means the palace of the pharaoh's daughter, which doesn't really apply to the reality. The reality is inscriptions found on site say it's dedicated to Aphrodite and to Zeus, the Nabatean versions, Dushara and Aludza. And it's not just this temple. There's a grand complex that has separate temples and shrines. But this is the one that all of our attention is given to because it's so well preserved. And you can just make out the individual blocks that are cut in place to construct this. It's over 100 feet wide and 100 feet long, about the same size and height. So we don't have to use our imagination to understand how important this temple was, also with its own gigantic altar. And we can make out some of the details on the exterior of the walls. This would have been painted and colored, very much more lavish than what we see. And in the imperial period under the Romans, it's even given marble stairs and a marble interior. So we have a long life for this temple complex that we think archaeologically goes back to the reign of Aretas IV. As sea routes changed under the Romans, some of the caravan routes pushed further north, it's going to have an overall profound effect upon the Nabatean culture and way of life. But for a while, Petra continued to flourish. But by the end of the 3rd century, we don't see Nabatean inscriptions. It's predominantly in Greek. Now, the city is eventually going to be Christianized in the 4th century, as the rest of the empire. But you're not going to see a real change in the impact of the economy for a while. And in fact, the church culture is going to flourish here. This is the Ridge Church. It was built from 450 to 600, finally destroyed by a fire, thereby preserving these beautiful mosaics. It gives us a sense of the wealth and prosperity still in Petra. But when Petra becomes Islamic, it pretty much is going to be abandoned. There's a brief moment when you have a Crusader fort constructed on the mountain Jabal al-Habiz overlooking the city center, but that too goes away. And then Petra falls from memory, known only to the local nomads. It wasn't until the 19th century that Europeans would again lay eyes on Petra. The Swiss explorer Johann Burckhardt had heard tales of a hidden ancient city, so he set out to find it. Fluent in Arabic and disguised as a Muslim traveler, he rediscovered Petra in 1812, becoming the first Westerner to visit since the Crusades. After his journal was published, it became a must-see destination for adventurers, artists, architects, and finally tourists. Featured in several recent movies like Indiana Jones, it has continued to capture the imagination and is rightly recognized as one of the most important archaeological sites in the world. And now I'm arriving at a spectacular entrance into Petra. Look what awaits me, the monastery, Adir. It's called this because of crosses that were found inscribed inside. Cut back into the cliff to make this impressive forecourt, you have the monumental facade of the monastery, 49 meters wide, 45 meters high. It's like the treasury, a little less refined in the details, but much more massive, much more muscular in scale, let's say. And there is a processional route, it seems, then cut into the staircase in the cliff below to reach this point. Was it a place of worship? Was it a tomb of one of the rulers of Petra? We really have a lot of unanswered questions. Nearby, an inscription was found attributed to the ruler Obidas I, who we know was worshipped as a god after he died. We have a lot of questions, but we're always impressed by this incredible architecture. Look at the details of the facade. We have that central tholos, that kind of round temple construction in the center, just like in the treasury, but this is much more massive. Look at the big niches that would have been filled with statuary. As we make our way down here, we look at the capitals. They're pretty much just roughed out, not entirely finished. And at the bottom, there's a whole section that cuts across. The sandstone has eroded, has been worn. So initially, the idea that we think is that the entire surface was covered in stucco and paint. Would have been a much more vibrant experience, and it would have been much more protective. Today, the facade is exposed to the elements, and preservation is the big issue. The task of identifying the ownership of these prominent tombs at Petra with the known rulers is basically an impossible task. They don't have any inscriptions preserved, and the archaeological evidence has been lost, robbed out long ago. Be that as it may, locally, these tombs underneath the mountain Jabal Qubta are known as the royal tombs for their prominence, for their majesty and scale. And they are known as the palace tomb that looks like the facade of a grand palace, the Corinthian tomb, the silk tomb, which has striations in the sandstone that are beautiful, reminding people of silk. And finally, the grand urn tomb, which has an elevated courtyard. It was converted into a church in the 5th century CE. Of all the tombs at Petra, only 2 are ascribed to Romans. And this one is important because it's the tomb of Sextius Florentinus. We know this because his inscription is on the tomb. We have the information about his career. He was the governor of the province of Arabia Petraea. Petra was the capital of the province, and he died while in office between 128 and 129 CE. The province had been absorbed by Trajan in 106, and in 130, the Emperor Hadrian visited, and he added his name to Petra, adding the glory of the city to himself. Sextius Florentinus must have also loved Petra enough to be enshrined in a Nabatean-style tomb for all eternity. This then is the high place of sacrifice. All of Petra is down below us. The Nabateans weren't just about building tomb facades. They were all about celebrating and harmonizing with the natural landscape, taming it with water, building architectural wonders, celebrating life and their success in their empire, and also celebrating frequently the afterlife, bringing their Arabian gods in harmony with other deities, from Egypt to Greece. Certainly, so much of Petra has resisted the erosion of time, from conquering Romans and Muslims to encroaching desert sands. And with the constant work of the Petra National Trust and the local communities, we're ensured it will be preserved for centuries to come.